Let's do AOS no vid, like that. AOS. All right, y'all. So I am now here with another special guest who will be a big part of the show tonight. Let's pop over to here. And we have Mr. Jeffrey Kluger. Jeffrey Kluger wrote a bunch of, I say stories, right? Is that correct? Books is the right way to say it.
Yes.
I know Apollo 8 was one of the things you did. Apollo 13 was another book story, kind of the history of it or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
It was the first book I did, and it became little movie.
It became a little movie, yeah. And you don't just like show up and write books for fun. You're with Time Magazine.
Time Magazine, that's right.
What's the official title with Time Magazine?
It is editor at large, and my feeling is editor at large is that means they don't know what to do with me anymore, so they give me the vaguest title possible, and
nice.
I'll go away.
It's just editor at large. Just keep up.
Just
doing research stories. Yeah, don't get in the way. Nice.
Yeah.
Just a timely movie. Yeah. I mean, when I was typing in the lower third, y'all, he was like, "Oh yeah, well, it's actually Lord Jeffrey Kluger," and I was like, "I can type that. If you want me to type it, we don't have a control room and all that sort of stuff."
Right. No, that's my vanity appeal, but don't indulge me, please.
Nice. You don't have a sword or anything, right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
That could come.
Not yet. It's nice. So, tell me about your history in writing books, writing stories.
Well, I will tell you that the first book I ever wrote, I had been in journalism for about, let's say, 15 years.
15 years?
15 years, and at that point I worked at Discover magazine.
Okay.
And that summer, Discover went briefly out of business. Well, Samuel Johnson once said that knowing that you're about to be hanged in a fortnight focuses the mind splendidly.
Focuses the mind, nice.
So knowing that we have just all lost our jobs focused the mind splendidly, and I decided perhaps this is time to write a book.
Excellent.
I always knew I wanted to write Apollo 13. I was around during that mission. I was as terrified as everyone else when that was being flown. Jim Lovell was my favorite astronaut.
Right.
I had the opportunity to work with him, greatest astronaut who ever lived, and it was a singular life experience.
No kidding.
Fantastic.
Just getting the stories, the backstory, and the research, and just everything about...
Backstory and the research, and being able to talk to the people who flew the mission. And I will tell you
something... Talk to the people who flew the mission, right?
Who flew the mission.
Yeah.
You can have a man... Remember, Lovell flew on Apollo 8 and Apollo 13.
Right.
So when you have a man who can actually not just say, when I went to the moon,
right,
but can say... The first time I went
to the moon.
And then the second time I went to the moon.
Nice.
Yeah. The best I can say is the first time I went to Bangor, Maine. So no slur on Bangor, Maine.
Oh, no. So it's amazing. It's like if I were to go and write a book or something like that, I would probably search on the internet.
Yeah.
And I would probably do a bunch of research. It would be difficult for me to go and talk to the people who actually flew it. When did you write that book?
Oh my God! Well, this will date me, but it was
That's okay.
It was 1992. I first started working on it, and I'll tell you something funny.
Right.
Back then, at first I thought I was going to just do it myself.
Right.
Sent a letter to Jim Lovell, an actual paper
letter,
and
Mark
somebody,
I communication.
Right, carried that analog piece of communication to his home, and it was carried back to mine.
No
and
kidding.
I just asked him, "Are you willing to be interviewed?"
Right.
And he wrote back and said, "Well, frankly, I'd prefer to collaborate."
Sure.
And I thought, my hero, the greatest astronaut on the planet.
All right, wait.
I get to collaborate with
interview
him,
is like you go and talk to him once, you
Yeah.
get some information, then you're done.
Right.
But collaborate is more like a bigger
whole
deal.
relationship.
So that's like an upgrade.
So it's a big upgrade. But of course, being a writer, that means I am vain.
Right.
So the first thing I thought
You're a streamer, I'm vain too, so
exactly.
It's gonna have to be, yeah.
Right. So the first thing I thought was, well, now, whose name is going to go first?
Right.
I mean, alphabetically, Kluger comes before Lovell.
I'll
probably be doing a little more of the writing.
I don't know what they're dragging in over there.
I have no idea.
Chad, if you're hearing that noise, we are probably picking that noise up, something terrible. They were pulling something in. Let's give them. I mean, it's an active environment.
Yeah,
there are people here.
We're on a flight deck.
We're literally
with a shuttle over our heads. So I will end that story by saying, then I was hit by a sudden burst of humility because I thought back to 1970 and I realized Jim Lovell went to the moon that year.
Right.
I went to summer camp.
You went to summer camp.
So I told that story on Seth Meyers' show once, and he said, well, that's kind of a tiebreaker.
It's kind of a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
No kidding. So, with Artemis, what do you know about Artemis so far?
I know that Andy has done something with this book that I think is very cunning and
Right.
also quite brave.
Right.
And I'm going to ask him this when we first sit down.
Okay. So we get to know the questions in advance.
Yes, exactly. Don't tell people. It's
Don't
on
tell
the
anybody what
test.
the questions are going to be.
But I'm going to say, look, The Martian was a story about science and space.
Right.
And it was set in space, and it was all about the science.
Absolutely.
Here, we have a story about science and space, but it's also a murder case.
Yeah.
And that is harder to do. That's a little bit like me saying, I'm going to write Little Women
Right.
and Gladiator.
And
I'm going to
Gladiator.
put them together somehow. No, okay. Space and a
Pretty
murder
close,
mystery
I
are,
mean.
yeah, they're a little closer than that. But still, the idea that you take these two forms
Yep.
that ought not necessarily to be compatible and say, I'm going to trust myself to make
This happen. It seems like such a great idea because it takes the scientific and the space aspect of things, but then it's got the human element too.
Exactly,
Like very strongly,
yeah.
a lot of the story, I imagine, I don't know,
Yeah.
would be driven by the reality of humanity being in a place and making a city or whatever.
Yeah, and making a city. And also keep in mind, these stories, no matter how technical they are,
Right.
no matter how technological they are,
Yep.
they are animated by people.
They're animated
And
by-
that's-
absolutely.
Your story must have a beating heart and blood in its veins.
Absolutely.
And that's what Andy did with Mark Watney.
Absolutely.
And that's
Bring
what
him
he's
home
done
and the
with Jasmine,
people, the scenes
and
of the people all over,
exactly.
looking at the big screens.
And
And
we care about people.
Yes, we do.
It doesn't matter who we are. It doesn't matter what the storyline is. That's why we feel-good stories or heart-rending stories at the end of the news, those 3-minute feel-good tales.
yeah.
You tear up because you think,
It's the human interest sort of thing. It's like it's a unifying sort of thing. Like
That's
this
right.
person's in trouble or this thing's going on or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's
yeah.
pulled together.
It's
It's
pulled
good
together.
to feel that
Yeah.
way sometimes.
Yeah,
It's good.
exactly.
We probably need to feel that way more, honestly.
I would think so. Yeah.
Excellent. So we've got about 5 minutes left. We'll do the
Okay.
same thing we did last time, chat. If you have any questions, you can put some questions in. Make sure you use the word DOS or question. We don't have a lot of time here, so just put some questions in a Twitch chat over there. I will ask. You did a bunch of other stuff, not space related, because you did Apollo 8. and you
I did Apollo 8,
13,
yes.
But you also did.
I've done, certainly I've done stories for Time Magazine for 20-some years now.
Right. So a couple little things, here and there.
bunch of cover stories here or there.
Bunch of cover stories here or there.
But I've done a few novels, few young adult novels, or a couple.
Right.
I did one of my other favorite books that I did was Jonas Salk and the polio vaccine, which was also, I felt, a good story to get to write because, first of all, the science was real and complex, but with incredibly high stakes.
Right.
You had a ticking clock every single summer, and every single summer you knew that 10 or 30 or 50,000 children in
Yep.
the U.S. alone
Yep.
were going to be crippled and perhaps killed by polio, and then one summer, it stopped.
It's gone. Yeah.
It's gone, or at least it began going.
No
that,
kidding.
It was one of the extraordinary achievements, and it was in some ways just like Apollo 11, when
Right.
people said, we're going to go to the moon, and we bloody went to the moon.
Yeah.
Jonas Salk and the other scientists who were working on this said, enough already.
Yep.
Polio does not go on
Yep.
on our watch.
On our watch, I love it.
And it stopped.
It's crazy because when you have something like going to the moon, you have this big hero, and it's like we've
Right.
got broadcasts from space and all these
Right.
different things that are going on, right?
Yeah.
And you have something like the polio vaccine, which is
Yeah.
very much like scientists who aren't
Yeah.
on the front page every day, and it's
Right.
not a bunch of hype and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it affects so many people.
So many more people.
Right?
That's
it
right.
really does.
Yeah,
And a lot of times the big hype things get a lot of traction,
Right.
a lot of publicity,
Yeah.
and things that may honestly be more important
Yeah.
in the short term,
Sure.
or as important easily.
Right. Well, I mean, it has a retail impact
Yeah.
on individual people. You get vaccinated, you
Yep.
don't get polio.
Yep.
You don't get vaccinated.
A much
you
more sort of
may
like
get
first
polio.
order result. It's like we got
Exactly.
vaccinated and
A
we didn't get
first
sick
order
because of
result.
it, as opposed
Right.
to the space program gives us
Right.
all sorts of recycling and new materials and all sorts of
Right.
important things for society.
Yeah.
But they're not necessarily immediately obvious
That's right.
that it came
yeah.
from there. So
yeah, and that's why
really,
I
really,
say,
really cool.
look into the camera, and I want to say, no matter what people tell you in the crazier provinces of the internet, vaccines are safe and effective. If you are old enough to have children, get them vaccinated. If you're not old enough yet, when you get there,
Get
get
some vaccine.
your children
It's sort of
vaccinated.
a proven thing, as it turns out. Who knew science?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So we've got one question here. What's one thing
Okay.
you like about Andy's writing?
What I
this
like
is probably the
about
only question we
Andy's,
have.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What I like about Andy's writing, and I'm also going to say this during the thing, is that he seems to do what I try to do, and I'm not saying I invented this, when I'm writing about science.
Right.
He makes the science, it's a very difficult thing to do, just easy enough so that anyone can understand it, but just hard enough so that when you do understand it, you're proud of yourself.
Yeah, you're proud of yourself.
I'm damn smart. And that is the sweet spot for writing about science.
Absolutely.
And he has that nailed.
That's a sweet spot for Kerbal Space Program as well, because it's not a simulator. It's sort of it's a video game.
That's right.
But it's just accurate enough so that when you get it, you're like, I got it. I got it in orbit. I got to the moon.
Right. This ain't Donkey Kong. I got to the moon.
Exactly. I'm not just tapping my way to victory here.
Yeah.
Excellent. Jeffrey, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you so much.
You'll have a fantastic time up there. We'll be watching the rest of it and appreciate you.
Thank you. Have me back. I love doing this.
Excellent.
Thank
Good
you.
deal. Good deal. All right, y'all. So we have just a couple minutes here. He's going to go and get ready for the main event. I'm going to switch back over to the AOS screen.